We let's begin with a pasuk from the beginning of Vayakil Pekud Vaya. Let's see Pekudei, and we begin here with Elef Pekudei Mishkan Haedut, Asher Pukad al Pi Moshe, Avodat Alviim Be'ad Itamar ben Aaron HaKohen. Okay. These are the records of the tabernacle of the pact, which were drawn up at Moshe's bidding, the work of the Levites under the direction of Itamar, son of Aaron the priest. Now, I'm not such a fan of the translation because it makes it more difficult to understand the upcoming Midrash. But so it's more helpful to see the Koren translation right here. These are the accounts of the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were counted, according to the commandment of Moshe for the work of the Levites. So here we have the wording or the name maybe kind of spelt out more literally, and instead of calling it the tabernacle of the pact, it's here the tabernacle of testimony, which is the translation of Mishkan Haedut. So, and that's what the Midrash will focus on. Tabernacle of the pact versus tabernacle of the testimony. So let's have a look at today's Midrash. So as we saw, Pekudei, the first pasuk in Pekudei, calls the tabernacle the Mishkan Haedut, the tabernacle of testimony. And the Midrash asks immediately, Ma'u Haedut, what is this testimony? So what's the testimony? Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Ishmael said, it is testimony for all who enter the world that there is forgiveness for Israel. So that's the first reason. Anyone, what would we need forgiveness for?
For the golden cow?
Very good. So that is a common explanation. It's a good guess. Something that one of the things that we would need forgiveness for, besides from Michael.
Yeah, but no finish. You were in the middle of answer.
No, just that there this. I mean, we do other things as well that we might want forgiveness for as well.
Yeah. So my idea was when I read it without. I think it was excellent, this answer with the golden calf, because it's at least here it comes after what happened last week. But you can say that there are forgiveness in the world. That you could believe that you do something wrong and that's it. And that there is the whole notion of forgiveness. I think that is what I read into it.
Beautiful. Where do we find this idea that just that there is forgiveness in the world is an incredible thing in and of itself? Do you know?
But
Have you seen this? In Masechet Rosh Hashanah, so there the Talmud says that even if when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to at Har Sinai, Moshe tells him, if you want forgiveness, then you have to say these 13 attributes of mercy, as we call them. So it's the 13 attributes of God, which is which we usually say on Chagim, right? Hashem, Hashem, and then we say 13 things that characterizes God. Now, the first time it said, it's God who says it to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Masechet Rosh Hashanah says, if it wasn't for this, then we could have never said it, which is a famous expression in the Talmud, which is apparently there's a lot of things that unless the Talmud had said it or unless the Torah had said so, we would never have been able to say it. But the Talmud, so this is the first thing, that's what I came to mind when you said what you said, Michael, was that, well, it sounds like the Talmud in Masechet Rosh Hashanah says, this is such an incredible thing that there is forgiveness in the world, and this is something which God has placed into the system itself. And unless God would have placed it into the system, there's no reason why it would exist. And for us to be able to ask for forgiveness, or maybe not ask, but at least do something in order to deserve forgiveness, that's such an incredible part of the system that unless the Torah would have said so and God would have said so himself, we would never been able to say so. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful suggestion. The alternatively, the Midrash continues. It is testimony for the entire world that Moshe was appointed by God. And that's number two. So here we have two things. Now, the first one is, the question is why the Mishkan? That's the question. What's the purpose of what's the purpose of having the Mishkan as a testimony? What is the Mishkan supposed to testify to? That's the question. And we have here two answers. The first one is it's supposed to testify, meaning to show or to tell that the Jewish people has been forgiven, or I would say, or I would add Michael's suggestion that there's forgiveness at all. And third, the Mishkan is supposed to testify that Moshe has been chosen by God, and this is supposed to testify for the whole world. It's supposed to show this. Rabbi Yitzchak said, to what is this matter comparable? It's comparable to a king who took a wife and loved her exceedingly. He became angry at her and left her. And her neighbors would say to her, he will never come back to you. Sometime later, he sent to her and said, sweep my palace and make the beds, as on such and such day I will come to you. So here the Midrash is trying to help us, and one of the reasons why I wanted to share this Midrash with you and think it over with you is because this Midrash didn't help me at all. So I wasn't really sure this parable. This parable I'm not really sure how it helped the Midrash. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. Maybe you can make some sense out of this. The parable goes like this, that the king, he took a wife and they had a lovely marriage until one day he becomes angry at this new wife and then left her. And her neighbors go then to this wife and says, that's it. We know the king, and the king will never come back to you. He'll find someone else. Now, sometime later, the king then decides, what? I would like this wife of mine back. So he tells her, sweep my palace and make the beds, okay? Because now you need to get ready because I'm going to come back. When that day arrived, the king came to her and reconciled with her. He entered the palace and came to her and ate and drank with her. So now he's back. Her neighbors did not believe it, but when they smelled the fragrance of perfume, they knew that the king had reconciled with her. Okay, so let's take a moment and go over this. The king has now returned, and he's back into the palace, and they're eating and drinking. The neighbors are really they can't believe what they think they're seeing, and they don't really believe it until they smell someone's fragrance. Any suggestions about what's the fragrance doing here? Is there it doesn't tell us who smells what. Any Any suggestions?
Yes.
We need. Yeta, you haven't said anything yet.
Who?
Anyone? Michael, yeah, you have your hand up. Come on.
Um, a very far-fetched thing is that they don't understand what's going on, the neighbors, which that is kind of the sense of the world without forgiveness. They cannot understand this is gone, and then how can you change your mind? And then you can say this smell, you could, if you were, it's a little far-fetched, but you could say the smell of teshuvah, that you reconcile, that you it could be what you smelled, and then what is not possible become possible. That's a far-fetched interpretation.
Beautiful. Uh, okay, this I must admit did not cross my mind. It's beautiful.
Good.
I was right. Okay, good. That's okay. That's better. I thought it was one of them when they smelled. So together, maybe together they have this fragrance of tshuva, um, and they knew that the king had reconciled with her. So whatever it is, whatever smell it might be, it at least the smell shows the neighbors that that the king is back and forgiveness has happened, teshuvah has occurred, and this is really here we start seeing the comparison to to Mishkan Haedut, meaning the testimony that the Mishkan is a testimony. So here the fragrance is some sort of testimony. So too God blessed be He loved Israel and brought them before Har Sinai or Mount Sinai. He gave them the Torah and called them a kingdom of priests, as it is stated, "You will be for me a kingdom of priests." 40 days. So I brought them before. So here he's really bringing, but still the reconciliation is there. That's the comparison to the story about the king and the queen. And God and his people were reconciled. 40 days later, they sinned. At that moment, the idolater said, he will never again be reconciled. Sorry, it's only now. So now we have parted our ways, and God and people around us will say about the Jews that God will never again be reconciled with the Jewish people. As it said, they said among the nations, they will not reside here anymore. When Moshe went to ask, let's see, and when when Moshe went to ask for mercy for them, the Holy One, blessed be He, immediately forgave them. As it stated, the Lord said, I've forgiven in accordance with your statement. Moshe said, Master of the universe, I'm satisfied that you have pardoned Israel, but proclaim before the eyes of all the nations that there is no residual resentment in your heart against them. So Moshe is now forgiven. So the parable then goes like this, that the king and the queen, they are reconciled, and this has become, and the perfume or the fragrance from this reconciliation, that fragrance is able to show everyone else as a form of testimony that they have been reconciled. And here, in the same way, the Jewish people have been forgiven, and God has taken the Jewish people back. But Moshe is not satisfied with this. He now tells God that, well, this is not really enough. Now I would like you to make sure that everyone else knows that we are good friends again. So God said to Moshe, as you live, I will rest my divine presence in their midst. As it stated, they shall craft a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. and they will recognize that I have pardoned them. And that is the tabernacle of testimony. This is the Mishkan Haidut, as it is testimony for Israel that God, the Holy One, blessed be He, has pardoned them. So in the end, it seems, in the end, Moshe says, it's well and good that we have been forgiven, but you need to be able to show everyone else that we have been forgiven. And the answer to this from God is that I will rest in their midst, that in the Mishkan, this will be God's abode. So here was sort of my issue. And then you'll get a minute or two to think about this. So Shachanti Betuchan says Tikva. Yeah, that's the wording of the Torah. That he will dwell within them or dwell within the Mishkan. So here's what I didn't really understand about this Midrash, amongst other things. But let's take one thing at a time. But I think so the Mishkan has this. God says that he will dwell within the Mishkan. Now, and this is the answer that Moshe receives when Moshe says, I need everyone to be able to see that you've forgiven us. So then the answer from God is, well, I'm going to be dwelling in the Mishkan. I don't understand how people are seeing this. That's what I don't really understand. How is this going to be a testimony? So what is it that makes it obvious for everyone else that God has forgiven the Jewish people simply by God dwelling and resting within their midst? It's how is this going to be seen? So I think that's my first question. Does anyone have an answer?
It's back to what I said before, that if you think you live in a just world, you do something wrong, that's it. And here the very thing that there is a Mishkan and is a testimony that this is a different kind of world, that what they did, but they still, it goes on. There is a new time with the forgiveness. But
Right.
that's the same idea as before.
But but anyone can build a structure like this. People have built huge tents before without it being a sign of God. So why would this be a sign of God, you think?
Because you build it according to the instructions. They didn't just build the Mishkan. It was told 10 meters here, 5 meters there, 3 meters. They built it exactly the way they were supposed to do it. So it's that is the it's not their will. It's kind of God's will. It should be 1 meter here, 2 meter there.
So based on the structure,
Yeah,
people would be able to see it as a testimony of God's forgiveness.
yeah.
Okay, good. I was thinking maybe an answer could be the cloud. So they were going to be followed, or at least there was going to be a cloud above the Mishkan. And I was wondering whether this might be even though that's not stated. So if that's the testimony, then the Midrash could have said, the cloud is going to be my proof, and that's something that people would be able to see. But since that's not what it says, I don't think it's a very good suggestion. But that was, I think, more visible, noticeable. Can it be the Shekhinah? So Tikva suggests that the Shekhinah would be the proof for everyone else that God has forgiven the Jewish people. Yeah, yes, I just don't know how you see it. I mean, unless so, how would this be a good proof? That would be my question, Tikva. And if everyone needs to, if it's the structure itself, you would have to maybe kind of assume that everyone has an understanding of God actually wants. But it could be that the Mishkan would be such an impressive sight that it would be such it would be a thing that people would admire, that might make it work as a kind of testimony that God has forgiven the Jewish people. Um, that could be. That could be. Any other suggestions? The question is, in what way would the Mishkan be a proof for everyone else from the outside that God has forgiven the Jewish people? So another thing that came up was this notion that what how should I put this? Uh, it doesn't like it's we have an idea. I guess maybe that's it goes back to your first answer, Mikael, about forgiveness. That we have a it seems like the Torah is interested in showing everyone else, not just the Jewish people, but everyone about God's power and might, and that comes up in the Pesach story first and foremost, where he wants to show everyone, including Pharaoh himself, that he is the strongest God. And here it seems what is in focus is something else, which is forgiveness. But there's still this idea which I was struggling with a bit, and that's the Moshe's need to show everyone else. And I guess the reason why I was thinking about it is probably because in the time that we're living in, me and many others with me, we're trying not to think too much about what everyone thinks of us. And we're trying to focus on doing what's right and not worry too much about what everyone else thinks, the and the reactions from people around us. And here seems very much interested in what everyone thinks. And that's one of the things that troubled me with the Midrash. Why does he care so much? He is forgiven by God, and he knows that. And and then he tells God that, this isn't enough. Like you, and which is also interesting. You've just been forgiven for building the golden calf, or maybe in this case, that's one suggestion we had. Um, or you've been shown that there is forgiveness in the world. But then he says, like, this isn't enough. So I guess that fits very nicely with, I guess, actually, sorry. Now when I think about it, and then Lena will get to say something. But now that I think about it and say it out loud, it fits very well with Michael's first suggestion, that if the point of the testimony, if the point of the Mishkan is to testify to the whole world that forgiveness is possible in this world, then it makes a lot of sense that Moshe is not satisfied with being forgiven in secret. That's very good. Because then he says, no, that's not the point. You need to show everyone that the world works according to this way, that you can do something wrong, but then you can do the process of tshuva, and then you can receive forgiveness. So I was thinking about it in a different way. I was thinking that that this was a testimony, a proof for everyone else. This was a proof that God had forgiven the Jewish people. And Moshe says, no, you have to prove to everyone else as well and show them that we have been forgiven. And that's what didn't really sit right with me. But it sits perfectly fine with me if we go with Mika's suggestion. If we go with the other one that I was thinking of, then I don't really understand why Moshe has such a need to make sure that everyone else knows that we have been forgiven. Yeah, Lena.
But going into that, it's a bit interesting actually, because it seems like Hashem's answer is mainly focusing on Israel and not the whole world, because it says, I will dwell among you and you will recognize that I pardoned you, and not, it could be read like that he's actually trying to put the focus back. If you read into it, it doesn't actually necessarily mean that it's for the whole world to see. So maybe he's trying to pull Moses back from concern about what everybody else thinks, and more having the focus on himself and doing right by himself and by Hashem.
And you read that from this sentence right here, maybe Moshe said, Master of the universe, I'm satisfied that you have pardoned me, but proclaim that's Moshe too. The Lord says, I
so
forgive in accordance with your statement.
It's for the one where he says, as you live, I will rest my divine presence in their midst. They shall craft a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. But it's not the whole world who needs to craft a sanctuary.
Right.
It's only the Jewish people. So I don't know. It was just like going into then that maybe he's actually trying to say, focus on me and yourself and not the whole world.
Right. And that's sort of also kind of how I wanted to read the Midrash as well, because I didn't, because I'm currently trying to not worry too much about what everyone thinks about me and us, but rather focus on doing the right thing. And even though it's very difficult to try and to keep that focus, and then. And then it seems so. I like this reading, and then I'm not really, and Moshe seems far too much interested in my mind of what everyone else thinks. Although the whole thing changes, which is beautiful. All of my problems are gone the moment we read it in Michael's first suggestion. The moment we read it in a sense where the Mishkan is a testimony that forgiveness is possible in this world, then Moshe is perfectly correct in wanting everyone to know about it. So, which is it's fascinating. With one change of assumption, the whole problem changes, and the bad guy in a sense, or the one that doesn't really understand, which I thought Moshe was the one who didn't really understand it in the beginning. Currently, suddenly it's God that doesn't understand that. You need to advertise this. You need to advertise that to everyone that people can be forgiven, which I like. So. Nico says the Jewish people is the light of the world. Well, to be the light of the world, yes, but I think more importantly, and maybe this would tie very well. It might tie very well into the reading that we currently have, and the one that I currently prefer than the one I started with, is the beginning of the election. So Tikva pointed out to the beginning of Abraham's election, and Abraham is elected, and Tikva called it that, referred to it as being that the Jewish people should be the light unto the world. But I think maybe what fits maybe better, which is connected, is that Abraham is chosen by God in order for the whole world to receive the blessing. So the Jewish people is supposed to be a vehicle in order to spread blessings to all the peoples. So that would again fit very nicely with Moshe's interest in this. In this case, it's forgiveness. That this is going to be something that everyone is going to gain from, and not just the Jewish people. So through the Jewish people, then this idea of forgiveness is going to become through the Mishkan. This is going to become a testimony that the whole world is actually blessed, and not just the Jewish people. Yeah, Nina.
Yes, I wonder how can we get forgiveness from God if we don't forgive our people around us? I think how can God give us forgiveness It's a question. I don't know.
It's a good question. Well, how can he? If you see forgiveness as a way of uh, of being in peace with the past, if forgiveness is a way to be in peace with the past, where you say, okay, let's move on together, and we have forgiveness is a sign that a relationship has moved beyond an obstacle. So that is a couple of ways of describing forgiveness. Then God has told us, He has told us that, this is possible. I've created the world in a way where this is possible, not only between human beings, but it's also possible between God and human beings. That if there is a process of tshuva, of reconciliation, then forgiveness is possible.
I think here and now we have the possibility to use the same together within people around us, not actually for the future, but here and now. And I don't know, but I think if we can be big as people, maybe we can see God too. I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah. So now we're not talking about forgiveness through people, but the forgiveness between us and God, and how that is possible. I think is it's such a good answer. It's such a good question. As I said, that the Talmud doesn't really see how it would be possible unless God actually told us, and He told Moshe that this is possible, but you would have to go through some sort of reconciliation process, what we usually call tshuva, and but that is part of the system that God created when He created the world. And yeah, I think we see, the I just wanted to see one more thing, because the the parable was hard for me to understand in the beginning, where
okay. Can
right.
I ask
I
you
think
a little bit?
no,
Is it
yeah, hang
clear?
on. I just have
Okay, okay. I'm
just a
sorry.
second. No, so I think my problem with the parable is actually, I think, also solved, because so here was my problem with the parable, why I didn't understand, why I didn't even think that it fit with the Midrash in the first place. I didn't think with the fit with the Midrash, because the perfume is so clear for the neighbors, that it was obvious to the neighbors that this was that the king was back. And that's what I didn't understand in the end, because it doesn't seem to me that it would be obvious that God lives in their midst. So in the beginning, we said maybe it's because of the Mishkan itself. But then Moshe doesn't seem like he is happy enough with us. He says, even though we're building a sanctuary, and even though you're gonna rest in the midst of the Jewish people, Moshe's no, so he says, I pardon him, right? So sorry, I read this incorrectly. So because Moshe said, God says that, yeah, fine, I've pardoned you. So Moshe says, well, that's not really enough. We have to proclaim before all of the nations, that there's no residual resentment. And then God says, okay, fine, I'm going to show them by dwelling within the midst of the Mishkan. So I don't really, so fine. So my issue here is not really, was really the same, that I don't really see how God dwelling within the Mishkan, I don't really see how that is such a good proof for everyone, while the perfume seems to be very well recognized. So maybe so one suggestion is that the construction itself of the Mishkan is going to be so wondrous that everyone understands that there has to be someone behind this, the Mishkan. That could be, but yeah. So that was the issue I had with the parable. But I think I think this I'm gonna I'm going to stick to the new suggestion that came up that if we read the first sentence, it is a testimony for all who enter the world that there is forgiveness for Israel. So if we focus on the word on forgiveness and say, well, if there's forgiveness for Israel, then this is a sign that there might be forgiveness for everyone, and then I think that that solves largely my understanding of the Midrash. But yeah, Nina, what did you want to say?
Yes, I wanted to ask you, is there a big difference between teshuvah and what we say forgiveness? I know that in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you say a long. I think you mean teshuvah is bigger than usually used forgiveness. This is another
Okay, so it's a
word
good
for
question. That's a good question. What's the difference between teshuvah and forgiveness? Teshuvah is a process that might end up in forgiveness. So there are two different things. Teshuvah is something that the person who has done something wrong, something that they have to do. And whether there is forgiveness after this process, that might be or it might not be. That depends on the person that one is doing to, that one has hurt. It depends on what you've done. It also depends on how your teshuvah is. But the teshuvah is the process that we hope will lead to forgiveness.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So here I think my issue in the end, which I think we will leave with, is before I end, does anyone else have any other questions about the Midrash? I want to say something else about the Midrash that I haven't touched upon. Okay, so I think so the issue I had with the ending here was I was troubled with the need Moshe had in order to show everyone else that we had been forgiven. And just like currently, I'm trying to focus on what we are doing and leave out what everyone else thinks of us. And then comes the understanding that, well, let's look at it in a different way, that this Midrash is really talking about, yeah, Mikael.
But if you take it very, very far, so at least until the Christian church, at least until the Catholic last 50 years, they went away from it, is kind of that God was so angry at the Jewish people that he abandoned them, and so this is also, it goes very nice into what you said now, that that there is something as a, it's right, Israel made mistakes in which we read about in the Tanakh, but that doesn't mean that just what the Christians, at least until a certain point in history, said, that God kind of abandoned them and took someone else. The
Right.
Christian, yeah.
Right. And that was also important for us to counter. I mean, we couldn't just sit back and not deal with that head on. So I think that's also I completely agree that that's also a time when we were right at speaking up, and yes, absolutely, which fits very nicely within the reading of the Midrash as well. So I think the whole the what it comes back to is now this endless quest in the Jewish tradition for balance, meaning there are certain times when we need to make sure that everyone knows something, and we need to show them what we think, or we need to show them about something about our relationship to God, and it's not enough what we know. Sometimes we need to be able to show this to the world outside, and in this case we have two suggestions, or at least two examples. One example was our relationship to God, and that God has never left the Jewish people. And the other was connected to the Midrash, maybe from the beginning, where what Moshe was in need of showing everyone was that God has created a world where forgiveness is possible. Not only for us, but we are the example here that forgiveness is possible in the world at large and for all peoples. And that's whatever God had done for Moshe to begin with. Moshe tells God, this is very nice. It's just that no one else will know about this. In which case, you need to actually advertise to the world that there is forgiveness. That's beautiful. And then I think at the same time, I think that at certain times we just need to be confident about ourselves and about what we are doing. And this is maybe the best example that I can come up with now is, and that I thought of beforehand. The best example is the halachic issue of Marit Ayin. Marit Ayin is a halachic issue where some things that you do that looks like you're doing something wrong might be forbidden, even though you're doing something which is permitted. If it for someone else looks like you're doing something wrong, in certain cases, halakha says, well, you shouldn't do it. That's forbidden because people are going to think that you're doing something wrong. But then very quickly, and I think this is one of the best reasonings for when this doesn't actually apply, is when there are plenty of reasons. So how would I put this? If you're doing something which has lots of reasons that wouldn't show that you're doing something wrong. So a good example is whenever you're cooking with something that looks like milk. So 500 years ago, then there weren't that many substitutes for milk. And if you saw someone cooking meat in something which was white, then it very much looked like you were cooking meat and milk together. So nowadays, when there are plenty of substitutes for milk, then just because you're seeing something cooking meat in something which is white, it doesn't. There are plenty of reasons there are plenty of things that white thing might be besides from actual milk, and there's no reason why you should worry about what people think, because they shouldn't be thinking so badly about you when there are plenty of other ways of explaining it. So halakha clearly has this idea that we should be worried about what people think, but only to a certain degree and to a certain amount. And I think the Midrash is pointing out here that some things are too important to let people think whatever they want. Maybe when the issue is important enough, then the Midrash and Parashat Pekudei might be telling us, you know what? It's not enough that you know it. It's not enough that God knows it. The whole people needs to actually know this because it's too important. And in our case, I think the explanation of forgiveness in the world is a very nice takeaway. So thank you all very, very much for showing up Wednesday learning. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Take care, everyone. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.